may satan di jor ya mom lile may satan di jor ya mom lile may satan di jor ya mom lile ni woy bir man fu mu yendu ma yendu fa yendo nane woy bir man fu mu yendu ma yendu fa yendo nane ni woy bir man fu mu yendu ma yendu fa yendo nane Sambalole, ya mom lile. Buri sambalole, ya mom lile. Buri sambalole, ya mom lile. Noi prima, fumayan fayendo nane. Noi prima, fumayan fayendo nane. Tamel me satan di jor, joro 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 ho 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 ho. Sama waji kendu jam nane. Woy prima, fayendo nane.
So please, during the tour, all comments and suggestions are please warmly welcome. So I'll start by saying the whole of Africa, can get close more. In the whole of Africa, we have about 68 forts and castles which were used during the slave era. And out of that 68, 64 is within the coast of Ghana. That is why even up to today, Europeans say Ghana is a gateway to Africa. They look back to history. After the slave trade was abolished in 1st August 1833 to 34, Ghana also took that 1st August to celebrate emancipation each year. Even during the colonial era, the Europeans demarcated the coastline of West Africa depending upon the trade in those days. So from Ada, Keta, Togo, and Benin, this is enslaved coast where you can purchase the greatest number of slaves. The west of Accra heading towards Cape Coast, Elmina, and Azim, that is Gold Coast. Then Ivory Coast. After the Europeans built forts and castles, they also established slave market for the supplies of slaves. In Elmina and Cape Coast, they have Asim Mansu Sandema. And don't forget, Elmina Castle is the oldest in the sub-Saharan Africa, which was built in 1482 by the Portuguese. Along the coast here, we have Badagry slave market in Nigeria. In Benin, Ouida, Glepe, Agbome. In Togo, Aneho, Agbadrafo. Then Atoko slave market. So, which is a community less than almost 4 kilometers from Keta. But unfortunately, Atoko was not an Ewe language. Rather, it was an Akan language. In those days, when the Ashantis got their slaves, they channeled those slaves through Ketekrachi, and then they brought it over there in exchange with gunpowder and salt. So the Akan said Metoako or Metoako, which the Ewes cannot pronounce very, so they corrupted the language to become Atoko. So this fort, namely Prinzensten, was built by the Danish Norwegians. Why Danish Norwegians? Because at the time, Norway was part of Denmark before later on they separated. So when they were together, they built these forts. And most of the enslaved from these forts were shipped to the Caribbean countries. Countries such as St. Thomas, St. Louis, St. Croix, St. John. In South America, Brazil and Cuba. In US, North Carolina and Florida. So those Caribbean island used to be a Danish island. So in those days, the US want to put up a naval base. So they bought the island from the Danes at an amount of $25 million. That's why today we have the US Virgin Island, no more Caribbean. So where we are standing, this is the female section of the fort, where they kept the female slaves, especially in these cells room. But initially, no ventilations were created. All this was done in 1850 when the fort was later sold to the British government due to Napoleon in Europe. So inside each of the cells in this fort takes between 40 to 50 female slaves. Slaves defecate in, suffocate, die due to dehydration. When shipment is ready, the slaves were being counted and brought out here. After they were being sorted out, hot iron were being used to burn a mark on the various parts of their body for easy identification. That's what we call branding. So in those days too, there was no birth certificate. In order to estimate their age, they look at the state of their teeth. The Danish Norwegians lived in Keta for many years. Even some of the language we spoke were integrated into the airway language. Today we have what we call gaflu or gaffer. It means fork. We have sakisi, which means zigzags. We have kakalak, which means cockroaches. Because the Danish also built fort in Accra, that's the Christian Borg. So the Gan say kakalika, kakalika. We have what we call safi, which means key. The Gan also says safli. So those are some of the borrowed language into the airway language. So items being brought in those days in exchange of slaves were gunpowder, were used mirror, were used calico, which was the materials our ancestors used to wrap themselves, which was made from cotton, were also being used in those days. So I'll take you around and show you what you have in the fort. So once again, I'll welcome you in the Ewel Miawe zone. That you say you. So shall we move?
Quick question first. Wida and all those other ones.
Yeah.
The slaves said, do they leave straight to Ile de Gore, the last point in Dakar, before they leave?
Actually,
they can leave straight.
From here straight to the Caribbean, from Dakar in Gorley Island straight to the outside world.
Okay. So is there any fort where the ship would dock, or they were docking and some similar ships were sending them?
Yeah, actually, that's very good. Actually, you see, today, if you go along the coast, let's say even from Benin down to Cape Coast, when you listen to our fishermen pulling their nets, they have a song. Carefully say, ahoji, ahoji, ahoji. In those days, the slave ships stay far, like what you ask. So they use our local canoes to carry the slaves on board the slave ship. Now, while the slaves were on the local canoe, then the white man would say, hold the edge of the boat, push. Our ancestors cannot speak the English language, so they corrupted that ahoji, botuboji, ahoji, botuboji. So really, they use the local canoe to carry the slaves on board the slave ship. So, shall we? Yes, I will. So over here, this is where the female slaves used to bath. Anytime they were taking or they were bathing, the governor and the officers stood up there, they looked them down here. So sometimes some of the slaves were being sent upstairs for sexual abuses. Even some were raped in the process. So as a result of those abuses, children were born out of it. Sometimes we are the Mauritians or the mulattoes we have in Keta. And this fort particularly was built in between two salty waters. We have the ocean on the left and the lagoon, which is the biggest in West Africa, on the right. So in case there was a shortage of good drinking water, the slave drank from the same bathing water. Yeah.
The salty one.
stool over here, it was a ceremonial stool, which was used by the indigenes of Keta. But what broke up one day, what brought the war was that one of the local merchants of the dance was killed by the people of Keta. So they used their cannon and gun and bombarded the whole town. So some people fled to Jelikope Zomai. Others also fled to Somme. So when they were leaving, they left behind these two. So that's why those people at Somme, they celebrate a festival called Keta Somme Tutu Zan. Zani Ewemin Festival. So they will come into the fort to pour libation for their ancestors before going back for the festival. And then we have the smoking pipe, mostly brought from Denmark. You can find some in Netherlands, even part of Germany. So ceramic were the materials used to manufacture those pipes. So they use it to smoke tobacco in those days. Even sometimes they use it in exchange with the slaves. And then we have some of the old coins, which is a currency used by the British and the Germans. The British use what we call the pence or the pounds. But the Germans, they came here as a missionary, so they use finnick. That's why today, along the coast here, especially in Keta, our grandmothers use the name finnick to mean nothing. For instance, if this is my mother, I ask her money to buy biscuit outside. If she refuses, when I start crying, then she will say it in Ewe language, which means even if you cried, I won't give you nothing. So this is the layout of these forts. You know, mostly all the forts and castles were built close to the ocean. But this one, Prinzensten, was built about 3 to 4 miles away from the sea. So erosion started destroying Keta in 1907. And unfortunately, that was the same year the port of Harbor in Jamaica was also destroyed by the ocean. But the wine in Keta continued until 1980. That was the first time part of this fort was destroyed. It continued eroding the place until 1999 to 2000. So two-thirds of the whole place submerged into the sea. So this is the remaining part attached to the female section. So this is why the officers stood up there, they look down there. So we walk, we are in here. So, and this is the money which was used by our ancestors, the cowries. The airways call it ho tree. The accounts call this CDA. So this is where the name Ghana CD also derived its name from. So 300 of these was equivalent to 1 male slave, 500 to a female slave. Okay. Yeah, because they will produce. That's why later in 17th century, when the slave masters on the plantation heard slave trade would be abolished, because Denmark made the first move to abolish slave trade. So they started importing more female slaves than the male slaves, believing that even if the slave trade was abolished, they'll still produce children, they will use them on the plantation. So this is a spine of a blue whale, a whale spine. So this is the tail. So this was killed by the Danes. When they were coming one time, this whale tried to capsize the ship around where you are coming from where the lighthouse is. Yeah. So they kill it and preserve the remains here. So even up to today, we do have some of the live ones. 3 weeks ago, early in the morning around 6, about 5 were here. They even get close to the ocean. This time you can see them live. Yeah. And then, you know, during the winter time, the slave master don't ship slaves because of the weather conditions. So they need to wait until the season is over. So while the slaves were in the forts and castles, their life were deteriorating. So they put them on board the slave ship, took them to the high sea, and throw them over there. So these type of fishes came to feed on them. So that's why up to today, the generation of a whale trace the same routes. If it is winter in road, they'll come to the same place to see whether they can get food to eat. Over here, you see where you park your bus? So this is how the place was before the ocean destroyed it. And this is how the enslaved were footed. They walked from sunrise to sunset without food and water. And this is how they were branded. After that, they led them on board the slave ship And this is how they were arranged at the belly of the ship. They punished them, and those who escaped, dogs were used to chase them. If they grabbed them, they put this shackle on their neck to stop them from running. So the airways call it ku nyowu, which means death is better. So on the high sea, if there's an outbreak of diseases, such as sea-related diseases, those who were affected were thrown in order to prevent the spread of the disease. And on the plantation, female slaves were masked in order to stop them or prevented them from eating sugarcane on the plantation. Because they believe allow them to have access to it, they will not be able to work due to the sugar content. It's coming. So over here, this is a weighing scale. Please come in. So this is a weighing scale which was used to determine the price of the slaves. Even before they shipped them, they weighed them. And those who are not up to require scale were left behind for another ship to come in 3 months' time. Because they spend almost about between 8 to 9 weeks before reaching their final destination. So after that, we have one of the powerful chiefs from Benin by name Togbe Kundu, who is a very powerful leader, and he also opposes the slave trade. But the Danish realize if they don't have good relation with this chief, they cannot control Benin. So they invited him. So when he was coming, he came with drumming to his friends and families. So they also pretend to go the slave ship. When he came there, I told you the governor was there. They went there, they were drumming, dancing, eating and drinking. Sometimes, the whites were trickish. So they lifted the anchor and the ship was moving slowly. Before they realized, the ship fell away. So Kundo and his group were being sent into St. Thomas in the Caribbean. From there, they bought all of them and sent them into Haiti or Haiti. That's why up to they've traveled to Haiti. They do celebrate Vodou Festival, comparing their culture is coming along the coast here. So after he was taken away, the Airways who are related to the people of Benin composed a war song in order to fight on his behalf. That's why we have Kundo ya voda magboy dada bami vami chokbaraji Kundo ya voda magboy mi chokbaraji nya papa dada kaya pa magbo me na va wage nya papa fufu kaya pa magbo me na va wage minyasu Minyava, Kundo Yavoda Maboy, Micho Barak. So the song means that their warlord or air marshal, who they believe is a very powerful leader, was taken to the white man's. Like most people don't believe, and those that doesn't believe say, let's bet he's going to get back. Or they say, no, where he was taken to is very far. So if what you are saying is true, let's go and fight. But as they were ready to fight, some of the chiefs told them, don't fight. He's a very powerful leader. They believe their ancestors were behind because taking him over there will be in the good interest of the slave because he's going to protect them. So really, if you go down to history, he was the leader who organized different leaders from different plantations. And how do they do that? Through that, one of the slaves from Nigeria in Benin State used herbs to introduce slow poison. And those slow poison were given to the female slaves. They start putting the water in the food of the slave masters. And at the same time, if you go from the northern part of Ghana, and that Volta region, getting to the north, we have a herb. When it dry, you're mistaken, it touches your body, especially if you're sweat, you continue to scratch the whole body. So all these were introduced over there to wash the clothes of the slave masters. So they start dying gradually. So when they rose for their freedom, and luckily for them, the Polish also came from Poland in support of the slaves. So that's why Haiti became the first country in the Caribbean in 18th century to get their freedom. And don't forget, when the slave trade was abolished, some of the slaves were being stranded in Britain. They don't have any work to do, they were causing trouble. And at the same time, slaves started talking about their freedom in America. So they decided what happened in Haiti, they don't want it to happen in Europe and America. Quickly, they decided to send some of the slaves back to Africa. is how America sent it into Liberia and named the country Liberalized Country. And the capital, Monrovia, was being named after the 5th president of America, Jos Moro. So Britain also followed the example of America by sending it into Sierra Leone and named the capital Freetown. Then followed by the French, they sent their own to Brazzaville, Congo. So those are the 3 slave countries we have on the continent of Africa. Thank you.
Nice one. Nice one.
So this is where they used to cook for the slaves. And this is the grinder, or we call this a te. In those days, our ancestors used this to grind corn, maize. So the Gan also say te. So you can see there's a similarity. Even now, there's a tribe in Mexico, in Brazil, they call this mayete. So you can see the relationship in those pronunciations. So we call this tevinu. And then this is the storeroom where food were kept. And then we have the cooking pan over there. And then we have a shell of sea turtle over there. Yeah. So the turtle in those days, you know, we have our ancestors who are local fishermen. Some used to go for deep fishing. And then there was no compass, especially if they were not able to locate their whereabouts due to the weather condition. So they have their own way. They will relax early in the morning, they watch the sunrise. They follow it, read the middle. In the afternoon, if the direction of the wind changes, they move towards it. But if it doesn't change, then they look for turtle. If they are lucky to spotted one, then they believe this is a female turtle. Why? Because she was trying to get to the coast to lay eggs in the night. So they'll follow the turtle until, and through that too, they've learned that if the great-grandmother of this turtle lay eggs here, any generation coming from the same turtle, wherever they may be, if they were female, they will come to the same spot to lay eggs. So from there, our ancestors also learn an adage, wherever you are, never forget about where you are coming from. If you are far away from home, from your family, from your people, make sure once a while you visit them and see how they were doing. Sorry. So this is one of the punishment points. So in those days, anytime they intended to punish the slaves, they will wait until the sun reached the middle and they will brought them. After they brought them here, they will kneel them down, tie their hands at their back, shackle their neck, raise their face towards the sun. Wow. So which means by the time the slave ship arrives, sometimes the sun rays affected their eyes, some became partially blind, even some became blind. They could not see very well. So those are the slaves on their way. Sometimes they threw them into the sea. Yeah, so it is about 3 people, one here facing this, one here facing this direction, and one here also facing this direction. So those who watch over the slave, the security officers, this is where they slept, and this is their bathroom. And up there, that's where the governor's residence is. And the office is at the top. So the slave masters live up because of 2 reasons. In case of attack, they can see and prepare to defend themselves if they are cannons. And secondly, they believe staying up will reduce the effect of malaria. So 6 months, 1 year, we see that slave masters die, if not because of malaria. I don't think what will happen to West Africa. The same thing that happened to South Africa could happen to West Africa. Yeah. So this is the dungeon. So we have 8 different type of these dungeon, but all were destroyed. Remains this one, and this is the shackle They put it on their legs and they use the chain to lock it. And then, because of the suffering they went through in here, they tried to use their fingernails to create holes within the rooms. So they thought they can escape or get out of this place. But due to the thickness of the wall, they couldn't.
This was done by finger.
Yeah, by finger. And then about even 60 to 100 slaves were kept in each of the dungeons we have here, especially for the male slaves. And then they put mercury, which is a poisonous liquid, in between the wall. And legendary stated that in those days our ancestors, some used to have these disappearing powers. When they try, they got stuck. And secondly, those who try to escape by scratching the walls, when they got to the mercury, it destroyed them or get them mad. So they die. So that's why when the ocean was destroying this fort, you can see human parts with mercury coming in between the walls. Yeah. And those are the governors, especially maybe the literature and history students in future, we call it govern. And those who put it on were the governors. But the one used by the motorbike rider, that's what we call the helmet. Okay, and that's a stretch.
What is this mean?
That's a stretch. They use it anytime anybody die, they carry it and bury them outside. So sometimes they give them mass burial. Yeah. So this, yeah, please.
You did it yourself?
No, but we are trying to get to the blast stain. This is the blast stain on the wall here. So this is the blast stain. So that's why if the paint go, still come back. So this is the blood of the slaves. Yeah. So really, yeah, really this is one of the most spiritual forts we have in Ghana. So sometimes you can sleep here. You can sleep here. You can sleep here. So this is the front view of the fort.
Which has been destroyed.
Yeah, but it was from the ocean's view. Yeah. Destroyed.
Oh, okay, so they took it.
Yeah. And this is the map. So someone say Gloria, that's Senegal. We have Sierra Leone, the returned slaves. So this is a slave coast. Yeah. So most of them were sent to Brazil and so. So they believe between 60 and 1860, 1650 and 1860, 10 to 15 million slaves. But we believe they were more than this. Because for instance, if they took about 10 slaves from Salaga in the north, and those 10 slaves were transported and they stay here for 3 months, from here they were shipped up to where they were taking them. Out of each 10 slaves, 3 or 4 will survive. So which means the rest will lose their lives along the way. So if they were given 10 to 15, then multiply by 3 or 4, then we can see number.
Wow.
So this man here, I don't want to you go there, I'll tell you history about it. So he's from America, so he doesn't believe their ancestors came from Africa. So a friend invited him to emancipation. That was 1997. So he went to Cape Coast. So on his return, he got angry about a friend. Why do you ask me to go and see a very big castle? But what shows my ancestors coming from there? I want to feel it spiritually. Say, have you been to Keta? I said, no. So you try and go, I'll help you. So 98, he came. After emancipation in Cape Coast, they came down, we took him around. He said, yeah, I'm feeling something, I want to experience. He said, okay. We give him a mosquito net and bed. Slept here. So less than 15 minutes, he couldn't sleep. He was running out of this room. So early in the morning, he wrote there. And then every 2 years, he visited this fort to pour libation for his ancestors before going back. So that's what you have it. Pardon?
You sure?
Yeah, we took him around. Yeah, I took him.
98.
98, yeah. Yeah, I was here a long time.
Is that why we have the beach named Emancipation Beach?
Yeah. That was the time, because at the time, it's only in Cape Coast. But you realize that the history is all along the coast. So they need to spread it for people to celebrate the emancipation. Yeah, okay. So this is the last place. Yeah, that's another one. So these are the materials they use. So they use oyster shells. And then these yellowish bricks were brought from Denmark. When they took the slaves, when the ship was coming back, they used it to ballast the ship. So where they brought it from, that's why the name Prinzensten derived its name from. It means stone of the prince or home of the prince because of this. And if you look through the shells, in 17th century, they dug the ground at Anyako before they got the shell. But you can see charcoal. If you take your mind back to before 17th, our ancestors were using charcoal for fire for more than 1,000 years. Yeah. So let's see this place.
May certain region, ya mom, may certain region, ya mom.
So we have 15 dungeons in this fort, but all were destroyed. Remains this one. So between 25 to 30 slaves were kept in each of them. Those are the slaves. They were strong, and sometimes they say they are stubborn. So the moment they were brought in here, they remained in chains and shackled. They slope the gates of each dungeon. They pour water, it goes through, they lick it. Even the food were thrown to them, they ate like dogs. And the local slaves who found themselves in here, unfortunately, as they were taking them out of this place, they have a sad song they will be singing before they leave this dungeon. So we have what we call Clean one ume dorovo arachiaga. Koto savi clean one ume dorovo arachiaga jimalapu nabubo. So the song is down, beholding the wife. We have come face to face with the reality on the ground. Koto Safi, one of the enslaved. If you have any tear to share, better start sharing that tear now, or rather retreat. So they'll be singing this song as they were taking them out of this place.
That's a form of discipline, right?
Yeah. I told you earlier on, the sea used to be about 3 to 4 miles away here. You see where the boats are? All used to be houses, schools, hospitals. Even when we are young, around 15 years old, our house was there, destroyed by the ocean. And then if you look through, you see this boat here, the one at the top here. So through the horizon, there's a 10-story building, very tall. Can you see it? Very tall story building. That's Togo. That is Hotel Dove River. So in those days, around 70s, 80 that way, if you're at the coast of Keta, you can view that building in this direction. But today, yeah, now today you are seeing it this. So you can see even the land that was destroyed by the sea. And actually, you can't tell. Yeah. Well, Rollins, they started and they lose power, and former President Kufuor also continue, and they did it. So both government did well.
We have lost a lot in that period.
Yeah. Most of it. Actually, even this should be done during the colonial era, especially during the British time. But we don't know what happened to what's left. You know, Keta used to be a very vibrant commercial town and used to be the regional capital of the Volta Region until 1963, when the capital was moved to Ho. So today, yeah. So this is part of the sea defense. Yeah. So that's a very brief history.
There's a writer. I want to find out. Was it written by?
No, it was no, not all during that. No, that one they found in one of the diary of their great grandfather in America. So the grandchildren trace these routes to come find out here.
So government helps you sometimes to keep up the place or to make.
Oh yeah, we are employee of Ghana Museums and Monument Board. Yeah.
What was the district doing?
The district, actually, this is they're also trying to help at that, but even we are lucky. Maybe if God permits, maybe from next month something will be started. They will start doing something.
I don't know for Keta, but I think they should.
Yeah.
Even if it's 1 cedi or $1,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Do it.
So just a very brief history. We have come to the end of the tour. I know it's heartfelt to listen to what happens here, but really slavery is all over the world. Even as we are trying to learn from it, it still happens. To go by today, I would say take different shapes.
Yeah, that's true.
Why do I say different shapes? You travel to some places on this earth today, people don't have food to eat. Somewhere diseases were killing innocent people. Somewhere people, because of their greed, they took gun, killing innocent people. But why should you remind ourselves of what happens, especially during the slave era? I believe it's because of one reason, which means we should never let it happen in our lives again. So formerly, these places were used to divide people, families, communities. I believe you can use the same place to bring each and everyone together, irrespective of our religious background, cultural, where we are coming from. We should use it to unite humanity. So my gift to you this afternoon is, wherever we are, we should remember humanity, we are one. We should not allow our ethnicity, cultural, religion, where we are coming from to divide us. So let's live as one people. My name is Ibrahim Bella.
All right, please yourself. Go photograph.
Ibrahim Bella.